Thank you very much. Alf Shok, Dr. Jibril. L'intervenant suivant, je voudrais juste dire que si, évidemment, c'est une personnalité très présente médiatiquement au niveau mondial, c'est une personnalité qui a démarré il y a fort longtemps, très tôt, prenant en charge des problématiques de négociation aux côtés d'Yasser Arafat, a été présent à des moments importants historiques, que ce soit à Madrid en 1994, que ce soit en 1995 dans le cadre des accords d'Oslo. Il a même participé aux accords de Camp David. Et il a la responsabilité de mener les négociations en espérant pouvoir aboutir à une situation de stabilité, de dignité pour l'État palestinien et les Palestiniens. Je voudrais vous proposer d'accueillir Dr. Saeb Erekat, qui nous fait le plaisir d'être parmi nous. Dr. Erekat, please, if you can use English, it should be better for me anyway. I can follow Arabic because I'm Moroccan Arab, but I think that we have some people coming from abroad and we can mix Arabic, English and French, and this is the way we live in Morocco, but we are open to that. Please, Doctor, because I know you're used also to that for medias.
Thank you very much. I'm honored and privileged to be speaking under the patronage of His Majesty the King. Thank you, Ibrahim, again for the invitation. I'm honored to be amongst such top speakers, Minister, Mr. Jibril. In March 15th, 1848, in a small city in Europe called Vienna, Chancellor Metternich had to flee his palace after 3 weeks of demonstrations, peaceful demonstrations. He used a cart and horses. And it took Europe 90 years after that for the dust to settle down. Took Bismarck, took Berlin Conference, took 2 world wars. And I believe as Arabs, we should look very carefully at what happened in Europe in 1848. What's happening in the Arab world is the beginning. It's going to be painful, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be long, but mark my words, Arabs are democratizing. Chaos, and I want to stick to the idea of the speech tonight. Yes, there is order within chaos. Ask me, what's the level of injustice, illiteracy, poverty? In any society, I can direct you to the percentage of chaos in that society. When such regimes as the one in Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, 42 years of doing a brilliant job at destroying every possible thing about institution. There is no future without Gaddafi. That's how Arab leaders think. Our failures as intellectuals, as thinkers, is that we have not confronted the realities of the changes. Arabs cannot see with the eyes of the rulers and hear through their ears and speak with their tongues anymore. It just cannot happen. So, is it the choice for my sons and grandchildren is to have a leader who they have to see through his eyes, speak through his tongue, and listen through his ears? Or to have the alternative of someone who can raise the expectation as high as being the representative of Allah on the ground? This is not the choice for us as Arabs. This is not the choice for our grandchildren. We have other choices. And we have to name things with proper names. What have we done to our school texts and curricula as Arabs for the last 50 years? What are the values we're teaching our children? Why do we have to die for Allah? Why can't we live for Allah? How come we were silent when some people using their names, Arab names and Muslim names, committed their evil crimes in New York, Madrid, London, Riyadh, Casablanca? How many books did we have to show the truth about our religion? None. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't blame it on whoever we want to blame it with. Nation states are about their interests. As us, as individuals, we are slaves to our interests, so are nation states. We are faced with difficult realities. I come from Palestine, a country that was crossed out of the maps. And ever since Eve negotiated Adam, I'm the most disadvantaged negotiator in the history of mankind. I have no army, no navy, no air force, no economy. My people are fragmented, and I'm facing Israel with 3,000 tanks, 2,000 fighting planes, nuclear weapons, and if it's my word against any of them in the Congress and the Senate, I don't stand a chance. And who said life is about fairness and justice? It's time for us as Arabs to get our act together. And getting our act together means you cannot fight ideas with bullets. You need to fight ideas with better ideas. What's the unemployment rate in the Arab world? What's the illiteracy rate in the Arab world? What is the human and individual participation in government in the Arab world? Are mosques the only place that we have to meet more than 27 persons because prayers on Friday requires more than 27 in numbers? The order within chaos has about 12 to 13 criteria. Number one, exporting fear. And it's done by those rulers who want to rule without institutions, without accountability, without the rule of law, without women's rights, without human rights, and also with the likes of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. Using tribalism. When we're going to form a government in Palestine, even though we're under occupation, we ask, how many people are from Hebron? How many people are from Gaza? How many people are from Nablus? And I'm sure in all societies, those who want to achieve what they don't deserve to achieve employ the elements of tribalism, south, north, west, whatever it is. Fighting, using the fight of corruption, using the injustice, the poverty, the ignorance, the lack of education, using people's needs, using systems of failures. The key here is how much are we willing to confront the realities of what it takes from us to change the future. Whether we like it or not, in a few hours, there'll be the 13th of November. Life goes on. It will not stop. The choice is ours. We can't stop. We can feel that we can have the cessation of movement in our thinking. Yes, days go on, calendars flip, but something holds our way of thinking. The major challenges we're facing today, what happened in Libya, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, these are the wake-up calls to all of us. None of us will be immune. We can do it. We can change. And change is needed. The individuals in their countries, they need to belong, they need to feel, they need to give, they need to contribute. And they need to live for something that they can be accounted for, responsible for. Today, the chaos, the most important element in chaos is using religion. And by the way, somebody called Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi as the head of the Islamic State. Somebody is called Benjamin Netanyahu as the head of the Jewish state. And yes, in July, we've seen on TV some wicked, evil murderers who put Western journalists to their needs and then slit their throats. That's evil. That's terrorism. That's criminal. That's murderers. But what's the difference between such criminals and some rabbi who puts Muhammad Abu Khdair in his knees, a 16-year-old boy in Jerusalem, and pours fuel on him and burns him alive? Using religion. Since my prophet, God bless him, died, I had researched 803 movements in political Islam. Daesh is 803. Nusra is 802. Zarqawi is 801 and can't take them down. We were supposed to go to mosque, we were supposed to go and worship God, not to use God. And the minute we go there to use God, we're going to have bloodshed. The same thing to those Christians who went to churches to use God. They culminated in their thinking in using God in churches with something called Inquisition, courts of Inquisition. So are those who go to synagogues to use God. The worst situation is that sometimes we feel that ignoring facts, we feel they don't exist. If we ignore facts, it means that they don't exist. Facts exist. Challenges exist. It's up to us. Democracy did not begin in the Middle East in 2010 Tunisia. It began one day in 1951 in Tehran, Iran, when a gentleman by the name of Mohammed won free and fair elections. He began reforming, nationalizing the assets, building a new government. To the CIA and to the British intelligence, this was not compatible to their interests. They brought him down in 1953, not knowing that they planted the seeds of Khomeini in 1953. The other element of our development as Arabs is that Western-Arab relation must be defined. And I can challenge my Western friends that since the year 1683, and I mean it, 1683, when Muslims sieged a small city in Europe called Vienna, we have never been forgiven for that. And anyone who raised their heads here must be banged. So Saddam Hussein is a good dictator when he fights a crazy war against Iran for 8 years. 3 million people died. And then he's a bad dictator when he occupies Kuwait. Muammar Gaddafi is Mother Teresa when Berlusconi invests $30 billion in Libya, and then they kill him. This must stop. Western-Arab relation must be defined, and the compatibility between Western interest and democracy is there. I want to finish by saying two things. Number one, our region needs no more wars, no more coalitions, no more the drums of wars. We need two things. Number one, democracy in the Arab world, and anyone who says Arabs are not ready for democracy is a racist. Anyone who says Arabs are not ready for democracy is a racist. Secondly, we need to dry the swamp of the Israeli occupation. And we need to see the creation of the Palestinian state on 1967 lines with East Jerusalem as its capital. Peace and democracy. These are the two elements required to defeat extremism. But at the same time, having said this, the second pillar is that our societies, we have to revisit many things in our societies. We have to rethink ourselves. We have to rethink our way of thinking, our way of conducting business, our education. We have a long way to go. The worst thing that could happen, Mr. Jibril, is that Libya is going through today is getting used to an order within chaos. Iraq is getting used to order within chaos. And that's the worst kind of systems. It is a system. Chaos has an order. As much as my grandfather clock in my wall that stopped 90 years ago hits it right twice a day. So to avoid order within chaos, we must rethink, revisit the way we think, the way we educate, the way we live, and that's called institution building. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Erekat. If you permit, I will ask you some questions because good opportunity for us to try to understand a little bit more what could be the future, and particularly for Palestine. 2 or 3 questions.
Please.
Maybe the first one, it's just that, please, if I'm not correct, you can give me the right answer that we can understand. I just felt understanding that the solution is here. The final solution between Palestinian and Israeli is found.
You're absolutely right.
Is it okay?
You are, look, I was 12 years old when the Israeli occupation came to my hometown, Jericho. As all Palestinians, I was jailed when I was 13 years old. Okay? And today, Israel is, occupation is the highest form of terrorism. It is. Dictation, settlement activities, preventing people from conducting even their worships in churches and mosques, using fuel, food, medical supplies against 1.7 million people in Gaza. I said that Israel has 3,000 tanks, 2,000 planes, and they have the United States as their full ally and support. But they have, having said that, they have 3 options. Number 1, my option, 2 states, to let live in accordance with international law. And yes, we will have a Palestine on 67 with East Jerusalem as its capital. We have to solve the refugee problem in accordance with Resolution 194. If they don't want this, if the Israelis don't want this, and I can't stand guards on their lips and their way of thinking, well, from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean, it's 83 kilometers. It's going to never change. So we tell them, how about 1 state? For Jews, Muslims, and Christians, all right, to have 1 person, 1 vote. And by the way, Judaism is not a threat to me. Judaism is one of God's great religions, like Christianity and Islam. Zionism is a threat to me. And turning the conflict into a religious one is a threat to me. So I have nothing against Jews. Palestinians and Arabs, we have stood tall throughout our history. Ask Morocco, that make us so proud of protecting the Jews during the Second World War.
You're right.
All right?
We did not. Very proud of that.
We did not burn people because they were Jews and went home to listen to Beethoven and drank champagne afterwards. We did not do that. So the conflict needs a solution, and the solution is there. It's 2 states on the 1967. They don't want it. 1 state for all the 3 religions, 1 person, 1 vote. And once I say this, they tell me, oh, you evil Palestinians, you want to undermine the Jewish nature of Israel. Okay, 2 states you don't want, 1 state you don't want. What's happening on the ground today in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, there are roads I cannot use as a Christian and Muslim Palestinian in the West Bank and Jerusalem in 2014. I still go with a green ID card. Israelis go with a blue one. My car plates are white and green. There's yellow. It's a worse and deeper apartheid than the one that existed in South Africa. And such diseases as bigotry and racism, once they inflict underneath our skin, we have tended to justify it. Sometimes sociological, psychological, economical, sexual, and now Israel is justifying this by security reasons. The solution is there. It's 2 states, 1967, let and live, and that's the basis of international law.
Saeb Erekat, we hope that we can move from this situation to real order and peace. Everybody calls for that. Please, frankly, who can impose that?
No one.
Americans?
No. No one. No one. Look, war can be initiated by one side. You can wage war. Tomorrow he can be with you. I mean, as an individual, you have a neighbor, you don't like him, you go slap his wife, kick his kid, burn his home. You have a war. War can be initiated unilateral. Peace, the idea here is that when conflicting parties feel that the price of war is much higher than the price of peace, they go for peace. All right? Today, as much as I put a strategy, Bibi Netanyahu has a strategy. His strategy, he wants a Palestinian Authority without an authority. Secondly, he wants a cost-free occupation. And thirdly, he wants to keep Gaza off the limit of the West Bank because he knows that there will not be a Palestinian state without Gaza and no Palestinian state in the West Bank. So he believes, his father died last year at 104. His name is Benjamin Netanyahu, one of the most prominent Zionist historians. He wrote in his last book to his son, we have a respected Arab minority. We, in Ards Israel. They should be treated very well, should have good education, good roads, good economy, good religion, so on, but never any symbol of sovereignty. That's what they believe. They worry from the emergence of a Palestinian state. We believe the United States, Europe, Latin America, Africa, Asia, China, Russia, they all can contribute to peacemaking, but peacemaking requires us and the Israelis. We are ready. We have recognized the state of Israel right to exist. They did not recognize us. They refused to recognize us. They continue with dictation rather than negotiations. So to those in the Congress and the Senate and so on, when they ask, the question, why do they hate us? They don't hate you. Nobody hates anyone just for the sake of their names or their culture or their language, all right? It is about us as Arabs. We have not learned up till today how to speak with the United States and Europe with the language of interests. لم نتقن الحديث بلغة المصالح مع واشنطن ولا مع العواصم الأوروبية. وعندما نتقن الحديث بلغة المصالح سيتغير الوضع. هذه الحقيقة. أنا لا أتحدث عن حرب ولا إعلان حرب ولا عن أي أمر من الأمور. أنا أتحدث بلغة المصالح. لأنه كما قلت لك، كما يقول أبو بكر البغدادي رئيس الدولة الإسلامية، بنجامين نتنياهو رئيس الدولة اليهودية. هو يسمي حاله رئيس الدولة اليهودية يعني. وهذا الصراع إن تحول إلى صراع ديني المنطقة ستحرق ويجب تجنبه. الحل يكمن وفقا للقانون الدولي بدولتين على حدود 67.
I want to ask you that we had a very interesting decision from Sweden a few weeks ago. My question is very simple. Who has to be next in Europe?
Well, first of all, let me applaud Sweden. Let me applaud Sweden because...
We can applaud together Sweden.
Yeah. Very simple, because, all those in Europe and all those around the world, they say, we believe in two states. John Kerry is a friend of mine for 26 years, and he always speaks about two states. Last week, I was meeting with him in Washington. I told him, John, if you say two states, if you agree on two states, you recognize not one state, you recognize the two states. So that's what Sweden then did. I hope that France will follow immediately. There is nothing that stops France. France should lead and should be the second, but I believe, for a reason or another, the second in Europe will be Portugal. That's my feeling. I had hoped that France will be the second, but those who want to maintain the two-state solution, they must immediately move towards recognizing the state of Palestine. On Friday, I'll be speaking about my paper on the changes in the Arab world and their impact on the Arab-Israeli conflict. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, Saeb Erekat, one last question. This last question, I'm sorry.
They want to have dinner,
yes,
God.
we're going to have dinner.
Hate me. I know
yes,
they're
I know.
Hate me.
They're going to have dinner. My last question will be very personal. Being in negotiation is such chaos, such a long time. It needs a wonderful quality, which is patience and patience. How do you carry both of them?
Well, first of all, whatever I do does not rise to anywhere near my colleagues and my friends who have given up their lives for my cause, or those my colleagues and friends who are in jail for 30 years or more. What I do is not a job. It's a way of life for me. I don't want my son to be a suicide bomber. I want my son to be like yours. I don't want my son to go through desperation, because I know that desperation leads to desperate act. And what I'm doing is not a job, and I'm not doing the Israelis or anybody a favor. I'm doing myself the greatest favor. But having said that, I think luckily, not luckily, I had my master's, bachelor's, and PhD in negotiations.
Yes.
So that's I'm stuck to it. But let me say thank you to Nama, my wife, who's here with us. She's been so patient with me. She's been so great with me. And my 33rd anniversary, I told her, Nama, it feels like 33 days, and that's the truth. Thank you.
I really appreciate and love when Arabs are like this. This is wonderful. Okay.